Welcome back, fiber friends, to another episode of the Wool to Gold podcast. My name is Brian, I'm your host, and as you might have noticed, it's been a while. We have a few updates. I do have this cute little mini microphone now, so we're going to see how the audio turns out compared to the other videos. I'm super excited about that. I also had to update our ring light situation because after 5 years of use, my old ring light that I got in college finally kicked the bucket. I think that's pretty good for ring lights, honestly. I was pleased with its service, but I did have to get a new one, so it delayed things a little while. And the rest of my intro was deleted, but essentially I just mentioned that unfortunately I did have somebody pass in the family. It's just been busy. But we're going to jump right into showing off all of our yarns today, so let's get to it. So if you know me, you know I'm definitely going to start with some of the skeins that I finished. We have a handful, so all of these ended up in the shop drop. I'll put the link below to my shop, although some of them have already sold. I'll insert pictures of the ones that have sold, though. There are a few art yarns that were a part of this drop that, got scooped up immediately. However, this really beautiful merino and kid mohair super coil yarn is still available. This was really fun. It took a lot of time to spin this for sure. Just because you need a lot of yardage to encase the yarn properly. But I think it just turned out really, really nice. And then speaking of mohair, this one is called Lucky Goat, and this is, I'm pretty sure, adult mohair. So it is a little bit, it's got a little bit more texture to it, but I kind of used that to my advantage and just made it into a more highly textured yarn. Very pleased with the way this one came out too. This is the only beaded yarn that is left from the drop. This is, I can't remember exactly what name I settled on. I can literally just check the tag. Stop and Smell the Roses. There we go. This one's 38 yards too. This took forever because this is 5 plies. So there are little super coil roses, as you can see, and there are little beads, little rocks, and stones kind of thrown in there and water droplets. And then this bad boy, this was part of the color study. The color study immediately got abandoned because life happens. But here is the end product of those rollags that I blended up, the purple and green and teal base that I used. This came out really, really nice. And I ended up chain plying it, so I maintained that gradient colorway that was going on. I did end up adding some finished objects to the shop drop as well, and these are just things that I finished recently. I finished this really cool sky hat. This base yarn right here is, oh my gosh, I know I have another skein of it somewhere around here. Give me 1 second and I'm going to pull it out. I wanted to pull it out just because I don't see these very often. It's a variegated lamb's pride. It's bulky, super bulky. Yeah, bulky. 85% wool, 15% mohair. 4 ounces, 125 yards per skein. I don't think I had any left over from this at all. I don't think I did. And yeah, I just used one of the art yarns, Lucy in the Sky, to make these clouds. There are bees in the clouds and super coils, although the lighting is really blowing that out right now. And that's one of the skeins that sold already. I'll insert a picture over here. And then I also included this cute little, I'm calling it the mycelium bonnet because it just reminds me of mushrooms. And I'm really, really proud of this, mostly because these are yarns that I just have a lot of love for and I've been kind of hoarding. And I don't know, I'm just happy with the way it turned out. Alrighty, just some close-up action on this cute little hood. I really love this. The yellows are going to be Solitude Wool's Tunis, and it's a hand-dyed mini set that I got last year. It was hand-dyed with marigolds, and it was part of their 50th anniversary set for Maryland Sheep and Wool. So that's what all these golds are. I love Solitude Wools so much, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what their colorway this year is going to be. I'm definitely going to be tempted to pick up another mini set. I don't use a lot of minis, but I always use my minis from Solitude Wool, probably because the wools are usually rare wools, and I just find that more interesting. And then the rest of the hood and these little anemones, minus obviously these little ends, are going to be this little skein right here. This is a skein of the Sheepy Shire's alpaca floof base. It's a silk and alpaca base. It is 74% baby Surrey alpaca, 26% silk, 328 yards for 50 grams. It is a little bit pricey. It's a hand-dyed yarn though, and it's silk alpaca, so that kind of makes sense. I bought this for $29 at my local yarn shop, Knit Knot and Natter. They usually carry a nice amount of these colorways, which if you've been stalking the Sheepyshire and you're trying to get your hands on Plant Mom, they might still have a few skeins left if you need a plug. But as you can see, I really like this colorway. It's the colorway There Are Things Worse Than Ghosts, and it is these really nice lilacs and yellows with little like splatters of teal and orange, which I really think bring the whole thing together. And then I just used a little bit of scrap orange mohair that I think I got from a brand that no longer exists. I'm 98% sure that's the case. So I'm not going to plug their information. But very pleased with how this hood came out. It is available as part of the shop drop. Again, I don't know. I kind of just put things up on my shop less to pay the bills and more to just cover art supplies, which I feel like is something that a lot of artists have been talking about especially on TikTok a lot. If you don't follow me on TikTok, you might not get all of my weird ramble, so I'm going to come and share them here. So if you're tired about hearing about this subject, then like you can just skip this part. But I just think in this day and age where so many of us are really like, the economy is not good. A lot of us have multiple jobs. It is what it is. I see a lot of like people who don't make art criticize artists for like not charging properly for their hours. And while I totally understand that, there's also the fact that like, man, I just got to keep the money moving. Like, this is an art practice. At the end of the day, I'm just trying to cover expenses for more art supplies. Like, would it be wonderful if I got paid $20 an hour, $25 an hour to like do what I do? Absolutely, that is the ideal situation. However, at the end of the day, like, again, this isn't my full-time way of supporting myself. I like, that's just what it is. That's the case for a lot of artists. I feel like that's pretty normal for people who do this part-time. And I don't know if I'd necessarily ever want to do art 100% full-time, because I think that would completely drain me and run me ragged. But yeah, I don't know. I just kind of like wanted to talk about that a little bit, because I've seen there was another YouTuber on here. I think it's like Passionate Knits or Passio Knits or something like that. And she was talking about how a lot of people ask her how she prices her crochet items, and she doesn't really like to go into the specifics of it, because like, yes, we all should be charging ourselves like at least minimum wage for our objects, but also a lot of us, like, we don't want to hoard our art. We don't want it to just sit in our studios for the rest of our life, even if that means that we have to let it go for a little bit less money. It's also the matter of like, yes, would it be great to be like a famous artist who makes a bunch of money, yada yada yada, but that's like not why I make art. I make art to put it out in this world. And if that means that like I don't always make back $20 an hour on that piece of art, personally, that's okay with me. And I understand the perspective of artists who are not okay with charging anything less for their work. Especially those who have been doing this for a lot longer than me, who are more popular than I. Like, I think that there are lots of ways to justify both ends of the spectrum. I just wanted to come on here and say my 2 cents, and like kind of tell you guys where I'm at, because I know a lot of people come to me on TikTok, especially where I have my largest following, I guess, and they're like, how do I do what you do? Like, how do I do this full time? And a lot of the times I have to break it to people that like, I don't do this full time. And a lot of the times, like, it is bordering on charity work in terms of what I get paid for the kind of content I produce and the amount of time that I put into my content and the amount of like research and thought and education that I try to put into things, which is not to dissuade anybody to start. It's more to paint a realistic picture of what it looks like to start this kind of journey. I have been doing this for a year, and I'd say I've probably covered the costs of what it costs to start this kind of thing, like making an aesthetic background, which like my studio is not that aesthetic, and like, paying for the slightly nicer phone and like the equipment setup, and it's not that much money. And again, at some point, or if you do things more efficiently than me, you're better at monetizing all of your avenues, which I have turned down a lot of I wouldn't call them sponsorships, but like collabs, I guess, with certain brands, because they just don't align with my ethics in any way, shape, or form. Or it's about like a lot of it for me, especially when it comes to talking to you guys about spinning equipment. I never want to be somebody who's like super influenced about the spinning equipment recommendations that I give. Like, would it be so nice to get a spinning wheel for free or like a drum carder for free? Absolutely. But it also comes a lot of the times with the fact that like I don't know. I want to be able to be super honest with you guys about any critiques that I have with something. And like that's assuming that I have any critiques. I'm sure there are plenty of brands where I'd be like, this piece of equipment is amazing and I have no issues with it. But I just never want to be in the position where I have to like nitpick or edit out what I say about things. Anyway, rant over. Let's get back on track because you guys probably didn't come here for for that particular rant today. I'm going to try to speed through some of these finished objects that I finished because honestly a lot of these were like these are prototype designs. These are things that I'm kind of just messing around with. I think a lot of people would be like, dang, you made some expensive choices for like fuck around and find out kind of experiments, but that's just the kind of person I am. And also right now I'm working from Stash. I have a nice mix of yarn. A lot of the yarns that I have that are like bougier are secondhand. I went through a lot of efforts to acquire them secondhand, and you know what? I'm gonna use them. It is what it is. So this hat, I have the base is Cascade 220, which is not pricey at all. But I did use some hand-spun yarns here. This was a lesson learned in so I like to sometimes mess around with yarns that are different weights, and then using different hook sizes and different tension techniques to create a fairly consistent fabric. Despite the fact that the actual yarn weights are different, it is possible. I've done it a few times. This was really pushing the limits of that, which is why this hat will remain mine. It's a cloud hat. It fits me perfectly, and I think it looks good on. It just looks kind of funny flat, and I think it photographs kind of funky, so I'm just gonna like hold on to that. This is another hood that I made where I was experimenting again with how much weight certain fabrics and certain things could hold up. And even though you would think that the wool base would be able to hold a little bit more weight than the mohair silk, or not the mohair silk, the alpaca silk, it doesn't really. This I will wear. I will wear because it makes me kind of look like a monster in the best way possible. And I I do really enjoy these weird little like, this was like anemone themed as opposed to lichen, which these guys you can see are clearly lichen inspired because I stuck with the green. This is also, oh no, this is Tunis actually, this like lighter blue base, and then this is also some Cascade 220 leftovers. And then if you look closely, here are more marigold Tunis wool because I just wanted to use these scraps. I had like yards left and I just thought it was such nice yarn, why let it go to waste, even if it is on an experimental project that like isn't going anywhere besides to me. And then this is thrifted yarn that I got because it's mohair, and I thrift a lot of mohair because a lot of the times I like to use it as accents in pieces, and it just feels expensive to have to buy a skein in like every single freaking color. And then yeah, this is just more thrifted yarn. I'm pretty sure this is Barreco, this guy, the tiramisu cakes that I like so much. I love working with this yarn in terms of making like art fixtures. I just think it holds up super well. And I learned in this project that, and after this one, I don't think I'm gonna buy any more Cascade 220. It used to be a yarn that I felt like was like a really fine like workhorse yarn or workhorse base. And I don't know if it's just that my tastes have changed or if the actual sourcing of the wool has changed, which that could also be the case. But I just really haven't been pleased with the way that it's been drapier than usual, and it feels more like dry and lifeless that it used to. Like, superwash yarns, they have a feeling to them and they have a drape to them and a stretch to them that I have like never been a huge fan of. But one of the reasons that I liked Cascade 220 was because it wasn't aggressively that way. And I just feel like the 2 or 3 recent skeins that I've picked up of it, I've just like, I don't know. taste change, it happens. But I did make this with Cascade 220 base. And then the outside is, again, that Barreco once more, and then some thrifted mohair that I just, like, I couldn't leave it there because I know some people would find this color so ugly. But I love it. I love it. And they're earmuffs. They're size adjustable too. And there's a cute little button here that I think I also thrifted this. Yeah, these, I catch me wearing these in the winter all the time. Like, I give no fucks. I don't care what anybody thinks. This is prime. Like, this will give me a little bit of dopamine in the winter when I'm just super sad. So definitely a successful project here as well. Alrighty, and last finished object is I used the rest of that Sheepyshire skein to make another hood. Instead of using Tunis wool on the edges, I used a wool that I dyed that I got from Green Mountain Spinnery. I don't have the label anymore. I lost it like a year ago. I'm pretty sure it's their Maine-based wool, though. If I had to make a guess, I'm 98% sure it's a 2-ply. It came out really, really nice. I'm being super gentle and not really holding it up all the way because it's still drying and I don't want to stretch it out. But I ended up using these, what is it? I think they're Icelandic sheep horn buttons that I got at Maryland Sheep and Wool last year. I'm planning on picking up more of these this year because they're just very, very cute. Instead of doing the tie front like I did on the other one. And then instead of anemones, I did little sheep ears on this one. I'll show you the yarn that I used in a moment so that you can see. Oh, there it goes. It's less blown out. It has kind of speckles of yellow and purple and pink. It is a, what's the brand? It's a really, Lana Grossa. It's a Lana Grossa yarn with alpaca and wool and polyamide and tencel. I actually really like it. I like the way that it worked up more than I thought I was going to, and I'll show you the skein and another skein of it in a different colorway that I got. I'm actually looking forward to using that. But by clearing all of these yarns out of my stash, I've made a ton of room. I actually got to reorganize some of my boxes, and I'm going to show you because in those boxes are a few more yarns that I spun that I kind of forgot to show you before. So I finally worked through enough of my mohair and alpaca stash so that I can fit almost all of it besides 2 skeins of Sheepyshire alpaca floof in this box right here, which is amazing because if you know, I used to have a lot more mohair. I've used a lot of it. These were the Lana Grossa Lala Berlin Hazy that I was talking about before, and this is the blue colorway that I have, but I also have it in this really nice, I think the name of it is Pastel something, but the name I don't think is on the ball, but as you can see, it has nice little lilac and yellow and pink pastels kind of worked throughout it. I'm very, very excited that I can finally fit all of this mohair and alpaca in like a small container. It does mean it's probably time for me to lift my ban on bringing more of these fibers into my stash, which you'll see when I show you acquisitions in just a moment. We don't have a ton of acquisitions, just a heads up. It's really only 2, but I went to some local yarn stores. I want to show them off so I can plug the yarn stores. I have finally been able to, now that I have all the mohair out of here, I moved some of my more outerwear slash, like, if I ever make a bag or a backpack type of yarns into here. This yarn, I do plan on probably holding this with a mohair or an alpaca to make it a little bit less coarse. It's the Les Gros Grams Wool by Biche and Bouche. I really, really want to use this as like a stripe in a hardy sweater or something like that, just because it's not the softest. Like, I don't really think a lot of people besides myself could tolerate this as like a hat or a scarf. Maybe I'm underestimating other people. I just don't get an aggressive prickle factor, and I get a little bit of a prickle from this, which usually means to me that other people probably get more of a prickle from it. I could be totally wrong about that, though, so drop your comments below if you have the Les Gros Grams lamb's wool. I also hear that different colorways have different textures for sure when it comes to that one, so I don't know if it's partly to do with the color that I got. But because I got to take some of those coarser skeins out of my Handspun box, I can finally fit my two most recent, like, super proud of these Handspun skeins. So these are two farm yarns that I finished. They are the Corriedale Cross Frost that I got at Rhinebeck. Very pleased with how these came out. So this first skein is 90 yards. The second skein is 116. They're both 3-ply. What I did was I actually spun 2 bobbins worth of wool. I put about 4 ounces on each of them, and then I took one of those bobbins and I turned it into a cake, and then I plied from the inside and the outside, and then from that additional bobbin, right? So I had 3 plies going in that way. Because I didn't want to chain ply it, and I also did not have the bobbins to be able to spin another full 4-ounce bobbin of this and then be able to ply it all off, at least at the rate that I wanted to. I really need to pick up more shacked bobbins at Maryland Sheep and Wool this year. It's definitely something I'm going to keep my eye out for, but I'm so pleased with how these came out. Like, I'm so excited to spin the rest of this fiber. I finally have the rest of it scoured and clean, well, 70% of it scoured and cleaned, enough though to keep me busy for a while. I just have to get back into the routine of carding wool. I was doing really good at, like, carding wool every once in a while and just always having, like, a stash of cute little Rolags to pull from, but I don't have that anymore, so I have to get back into the routine of it. But still, so proud of this project, so happy with how it came out. I recorded everything. I spun it at a 15-to-1 ratio and also plied it at a 15-to-1 ratio, and I was really pleased with those results, so I think that's how I'm going to spin the rest of the fiber. I have no critiques on how this yarn came out. I think it's going to make the perfect sweater yarn. I did turn the leftovers into a mini skein that's drying over here. I'll probably pull that down before the end of the episode, and I will be listing that skein on my shop, which I don't normally do for, like, hand process, you know, from a raw wool to the skeins, because I want to hoard them. I want to keep them for myself. I'm very selfish with those skeins, so I'm happy to at least be putting 1 or 2 in the next shop drop. Okay, these are the last finished objects I'm going to show you, I promise, and then we will move on to the yarn stores that I visited. I just have so much to catch you guys up on. But right here I have, this one is Sagaro. Actually, a live chat helped me figure out what we were going to name these, because I've been going live on TikTok again, and that's been super fun. But you guys helped me name this one. It is Lincoln Longwool that has been plied with some Rolags that I got from Hidden Pastures Fiber Farm, which had alpaca, fine wool, sari silk, and yak in it. I ended up having a lot of leftovers of that Hidden Pastures base that I had, and so I ended up turning the rest of it into a 2-ply, and I have all my labels over here. I can actually tell you how much we spun of each of these, and I forgot I settled on a name for this one. We're calling it Swamp Water, and it's about 64 yards, and again, it's a 2-ply. I'm going to turn that into a skein in 1 second. I'm getting it all tangled up with the microphone. Anyway, I also have this, the hand-dyed Teeswater, which I plied with Ross Farm Black Welsh Mountain. I have orange Teeswater and more Black Welsh Mountain that I'm going to ply it to, so there'll be an orange version of this skein as well. But it's just like a funky art skein, and I did not write down how many yards it was because it's been a long week, y'all. It's been a long month. And then the rest of Frost. I chain plied the rest of this together. I think it came out really, really nice. It's only 45 yards. It's a 3-ply. I'm going to keep it fairly inexpensive because it is such low yardage, so people are definitely going to have to snatch this one up if they want it. Alrighty, finally we're moving on to acquisitions. I actually found an acquisition that I totally forgot about that I never put away from when I went to Vogue Knitting, which I really only spent a few hours at Vogue Knitting. I didn't really meet up with too many people. I was not feeling my best on that day, but I did want to swing by, and I'm glad that I did because I did talk to the folks at Wool Dreamers, but we'll get to that in a moment. First I want to start with, I went to Knit Tapestry, which is another, like, local-ish heavy on the ish yarn store to me. But they started carrying a new farm yarn, which a lot of local yarn stores, like some of them carry farm yarns, but a lot of them don't, because farm yarns can really be a hit or miss depending on like the kinds of knitters and crocheters you have locally. But this is a yarn from a Wrinkle in Time farm. It is located in Sumner, Maine, which Maine is not that far from New Jersey. And all of this is from Diva, a Finn Sheep Cross U, which I just think is super duper precious. They have a little photo of Diva in here as well. As far as farm yarns go, and like for the yardage, I think that the price was really good. And I also think that even for a Finn Sheep, I think that Diva is pretty soft. At least for me, I think that if I held this with an alpaca silk or a mohair or something like that, it would definitely soften it up. But I don't think that it would need to be held with anything if it became like a stripe in a sweater. I should really make a striped neutral sweater with all of these yarns that are neutral and I want to put in a sweater, but I just keep putting off that project. Maybe that's a project for this winter. Next up, I finally made it to Cleo's out in Brooklyn. I meant to hit the Brooklyn General Store as well, and I just didn't get the chance. The day was too beautiful for me to spend another 45 minutes on the subway, frankly, and I kind of wanted to go and hang out in Washington Square Park and just chill and people watch. So that's what I did instead. I finished my project. It was time well worth spent. But I did make it to Cleo's, and I did get one or two little things at Cleo's. So first things first, I have heard people talk about the loopy mango yarn in general. I don't think I've ever... I don't know if it's just the colors or what. I just haven't been tempted in the past. I know a ton of people who rave about it, though. And this is their mohair So Soft. It's 47% kid mohair, 53% extra fine merino in the colorway moss. It's 65 yards. I don't think I realized how small the yardage was. But that's okay, because really I just bought this one skein because look at that texture. It's the texture for me. It really has kind of the look of moss, and I love it. I couldn't leave this where it was. I was enchanted. I had to have a ball of it. So I picked up one ball of that, and then I also picked up one of their little flyers that they have for classes and events. I did notice that, I think it's on this side. Yeah, they have a queer craft club, which is awesome. Thursday, April 18th. I doubt that I'll be able to make it to that, unfortunately, but I do plan on attending the Mask and Men's Circle that they have Monday, May 6th. That's like right after Maryland Sheep and Wool. I'll definitely be back in time. Catch me at that event. I really am going to try to go to that. So if you're local to Brooklyn, if you're planning on going to that event or stopping by Cleo's that day in general, would love to see you. And then I did get some soak samples because they had samples in my favorite scents, but they didn't have full bottles. So I just picked up two samples, one in Pineapple Grove and one in Fig. If you know, you know. These scents are just like chef's kiss. If you're not super familiar with soak, it's kind of like Eucalyptus or Unicorn Power Scour. It's essentially just a gentle wash that is intended to use on your knits. If you're new to like knitting, crocheting, etc., and you don't really understand why we use these fancy soaps, a lot of it has to do with like these soaps, if not properly washed out or rinsed out from the project, are not going to damage your fiber. Now, why does this matter? When you're a beginner, / when you first get into this and you start finishing your projects, I feel like people have a tendency to not want to rinse because they're already afraid they're going to like felt the project, right? And then by rinsing it and like having that agitation, they're extra afraid that they're going to like ruin the project somehow. Totally reasonable, but that's why we really recommend that you use these kinds of soaps, because there are certain kinds of soaps that if not properly washed off the project or entirely, they can damage the fiber over time, especially if you are working with things like wool or alpaca, essentially natural fibers. Yeah, just my 2 cents as to why we use the fancy soap. You don't have to use the fancy soap, but you know, just be a little bit more wary about properly rinsing your projects, etc. And last but not least, I have these balls of Moda from Wool Dreamers. So I got them. I got 2 balls in this really wonderful green color, and then I also got 2 balls in this really wonderful gray color. I plan on taking a nice photo of both of these and then bringing that photo with me to Maryland Sheep and Wool so that I can pick out 4 more balls of a third color, and then I'm going to be using this for a sweater or a cardigan project because I have fallen in love with the entire company of Wool Dreamers. If you don't know about Wool Dreamers, they've essentially reclaimed the process of, you know, having Spanish sourced wool. A lot of Spanish wool, just like US wool, despite being very quality, has been historically going to waste because, you know, it's not the type of white merino that is necessarily demanded by our modern day market. I just think that a lot of this wool is fantastic and beautiful. I love Moda. I think it's going to make a great sweater base. However, they do have lots of other lines of wool and lots of different colors and blends and things like that. But yeah, I'm going to just put up a handful of like the certifications that I know that they have and things like that. This is, in my opinion, my definition of like thoughtfully and ethically sourced wool. I'm sure that there are, like, in any process, you will be able to find areas where things can be improved, but I do think that Wool Dreamers is doing something different. They're really making the effort to put so much thought into their sourcing, and they're really, really transparent about a lot of the sourcing and things like that. All of these skeins have a story, and I really, really appreciate that about the company. So if you're looking to try out something new and you haven't gotten to put your hands on anything from Wool Dreamers yet, highly recommend trying to source it out. These are so wonderful, and I wish at the time that I had a little bit more thoughtfully planned out a budget for this trip, because I definitely would have picked up more of these. And then speaking of cardigan and sweater projects, I have finally cast on the Swans Island cardigan. So I have been hoarding this Swans Island yarn from Stars Hollow for a super long time. Stars Hollow is an ethically sourced yarn shop up in, I think it's Massachusetts, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong about that. I'll put their information right over here. But I got these dip dyes from Swan Island over a year ago. Oh my gosh, it's been forever. And I have it in this cream and gray, which is definitely going to get blown out by the camera, but I'll show you the swatch. I feel like the swatch gives you a better idea of kind of how those creams and grays come together. And then I also have 3 more skeins of it, in addition to the 2 skeins of gray and cream, in this dark navy blue and cream color as well. This was probably my like first really, really pricey yarn that I ever purchased, and I've just been hoarding it for far too long. It's time for me to finally use it. Recently I found a cardigan recipe that I feel very confident in and I think will work well for me, so we have started the project officially, and I am keeping the project in my brand new project bag that my friend Sam sent me. I made a whole TikTok about opening this, and I wish it would stop blowing it out, but look, it's Sheepin Sweaters. Sheepin Sweaters by Emma Ball. You can see I literally did not even take the tag off of the bag yet. And Sam did include some smaller project bags as well that I have been using that are just mini versions of the Sheepin Sweaters. But I have absolutely loved and appreciated these project bags. I've been needing new project bags, like, really desperately, because all the project bags that I have are not actual project bags, which used to not bother me as much, except that now I bring a crochet project on, like, every public outing, and it's just nice when, like, I can kind of like quietly and subtly take it out without having to take out like my whole project. Like, I could just take out like the little piece I'm working on and do that and have the yarn kind of like hidden away. That's been really like more appealing to me as of recent. And so, I don't know, I think this is perfect. This is great. And once I saw this big project bag, I was like, well, now I don't have any excuse. I have like a sweater bag now, so I have no reason to put off starting this cardigan. And I don't know, it's perfect because I love working on garments in off seasons. I know that that's not a lot of other people's things, and I didn't think it would be my thing. But I really, really enjoy making a bunch of garments for like the season that is coming, like a season and a half from now, so that when I get to that point, I have a bunch of like me-made things to wear, as opposed to making them at that time. I don't know why, but I feel very like non-motivated a lot of the times to make finished objects for myself during those seasons. I'll make like winter hats for people, for other people in the winter. I just won't make them for myself in the winter. I don't know why I do this. We all have our little quirks. I hope you guys didn't mind how chaotic this one was. I usually plan out at least a little bit, like, oh, first we're gonna go over acquisitions, or first we're gonna go over all my whips, or I just jumped around. I like looked around the room and I was like, there are so many things for me to cover here that I'm just gonna try to get through all of them. But I hope this made your day. I hope the rambles helps you get through your workday or working on a project or whatever you're doing today. I hope that you stayed safe during the earthquake, the eclipse, all of the wild things that have been going on lately. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say today. I think for once I am out of things to talk about in regards to yarn, at least for the next half an hour before I think of something else for hopefully next week's episode. Fingers crossed. I'm going to try to get back into the routine of uploading at least twice a month. That's going to be the new goal. I'm really going to try to shoot for that. I have this thing where I always try to record shorter videos, and then my shorter videos are like 40 minutes long, and that's after like meticulous editing, like cutting probably 20 to 25 minutes of footage. So I'm going to try to do that less. I'm going to try to do more single takes and need less editing and kind of just sometimes leave a little bit more of the weird stuff in. So again, thanks for coming. If you want to follow me on my other socials, I do have a TikTok, I have an Instagram, I also have a shop where again, I sell handspun yarn, finished crochet objects, etc. Coming up on my TikTok is going to be the dog yarn series again because spring has sprung. Bo is shedding a ton, and so I'm getting enough shed that I definitely have enough that I could be spinning a bow yarn right now. So if you want to see that, if you want to stay in the loop, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to follow along. I'll probably bring that content along over here as well because everybody always loves the dog yarn. Everybody always has so many questions about the dog yarn. So yeah, thanks for coming and I'll see you guys on the next one.